Welcome to On Dog Terms. I'm MJ, a professional dog trainer dedicated to helping you navigate life with your dog without the overwhelm or frustration. Whether you're struggling with behavior issues, looking for effective training strategies, or just want to better understand your dog, you're in the right place. This podcast is all about practical, no-nonsense training advice that makes living with your dog easier and more enjoyable. Join me as we dive into real-world training tips, expert insights, and everything you need to build a better relationship with your dog. Because with the right approach, training doesn't have to feel like a struggle. It can be a path to real progress and a more enjoyable life together.
Hi, Sam.
Hello.
So today we're going to talk about puppies and potty training and socialization. But first, I wanted to ask how your trial went.
Yeah, so my 2-year-old Belgian Malinois and I, we traveled, we're from Colorado. We traveled down to Arizona for a French ring trial. And this was our first leg of our French ring one. I have done this level and competed with another dog in this same game or sport, but we were able to complete our first leg of our ring one with only losing 3.3 points out of 200, and ironically placed us in third place. It was a really, really close game. Lots of really good competition from everybody in all the levels, and really good skilled safe decoy work. That's always the most important thing when playing games like that, is making sure our dogs can walk away without injury.
For everybody listening who might not know, what is French ring?
French ring is like a 90% obedience-based sport, sprinkled with a little bit of bite work, protection exercises at the end. Some of the bite work exercises reflect other sports like Mondio ring. They do have similar obedience and protection exercises. There's some that are similar, same but different, with like PSA and IGP. A lot of those are a lot more protection focused, or a little bit more protection heavy in their presentation or how they play the game. French ring is a lot more of a stricter obedience, and it is a game that you must know the rules. Otherwise, you won't compete well. You'd very well have to know the rules.
Were you proud of Tip? I'm sure you were.
Yeah, I was. She performed really well for me, and I was really personally proud of myself for my confidence in my handling this time around, because the last 3 times I tried to compete for that same level, we didn't do as great. There's a few that we did fail, but we did have another good passing score, and this was again with a different dog who has since been retired from this game and this sport. I was really proud. She did off limb. She was stable. I was confident. It felt like another day of training, and that's the purpose of these tests and these games, until really put your training to a test and have something graded, and a neutral party grading your performance in your training. Essentially, it's really cool to get out there, no tools, no rewards, no nothing, and seeing exactly where your training stands on that day. And it's very humbling in good and bad ways a lot of time.
You guys did amazing. I loved watching your little video. What do you think? Because, we're always going to strive to be better, right? Like, you only got 3 points off, but that's still 3 points. What can you and Tip do better at next time?
I can actually practice some of those exercises. The one that we lost. So we lost. Yeah, it's on me. Totally. It's my fault. There's 2 exercises we lost the points on. One was 2 points. One was only 1 point. The 2 points we lost was a very, very simple fix. And I should have given a little bit more detail to that. And I didn't, because I was like, yeah, she's got it. Yeah, she's got it. And come trial day, she told me she got it, but she shifted just a little too much, and we got docked some points for her not staying in a down. And so really what in kind of like my recap of the whole weekend, and not comparing training, but comparing training in that sense, because we were all being graded. The people who placed above me, or who scored better and got full points for those exercises, they just had a better down, a down stay, or holding a down, or whatever. We didn't practice it enough, and I have to admit that. So now moving forward, I will practice my downs a little bit more.
There you go. I was thinking of you yesterday. I took Grim to his rally class, which is rally compared to French ring, nothing. But I was in class with him, and every time I needed him to sit, so, we're going through the little obstacle signs of obedience, and every time I needed him to sit, he would do it. It was the world's slowest sit every single time, like slow-mo. And I was thinking in my head, as I'm looking at him, I'm like, Sam would yell at us so bad right now.
No, Clippy has a really slow sit sometimes too, and I got to get on her about that. So just to circle back, the other things that I want to reflect on isn't just what we were graded on and lost points for. It's the things that I noticed that will work in the next level. We will be graded on a lot more critique, and we're going to have a lot more feedback in that sense. So everything needs a little bit of attention to. I just know particularly where we lost points, those obviously need a little bit of attention as well.
Yeah, that's still amazing though. So for everybody listening, Sam knows what she's talking about when it comes to obedience. You should listen to her. She does have literal proof that she can do it.
Yeah.
All right. So today we're going to talk about potty training and socialization in regards to puppies. And for a lot of it, there's not much of a difference, at least when I do training with my clients, there's not much of a difference between what I would do with a puppy or an adult dog here, but we're specifically going to be talking about puppies. So let's start with potty training. I figured that we would actually start by talking about our expectations for potty training, because I know that a lot of clients have been reaching out to me lately, or potential clients, or questions on the internet, all of the above, that have what I feel like are unrealistic expectations for potty training. And that's why they're frustrated and why they can't make progress. So let's talk about those expectations. How long does it take to potty train a puppy?
My answer is always going to be until the behavior stops happening in the house. Every dog's going to be different. Everyone's follow through is different. Consistency is different across the board. Dogs' bladders are different. So there's a lot of variables in it. And it's a really hard answer to just give a clear cut A or B. It's this or that, because it's not always that. It's usually a little of this, a little of that, less of that, to create the perfect scenario to get your puppy to be a house potty training and crate training in that same sense, as soon as possible and as fast as possible. And ultimately it comes down to reinforcement history. Where does the dog feel the best when they potty? And if it's when you're not looking behind the chair, that's where they feel their advantages, and that's what's going to feel good to them, and that's what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm. It feels like people want to rush the process, and there might be some frustrations when they've had a puppy in the past that made it really easy, because it does depend on the puppy and how consistent you are. So when you've had a puppy that was ridiculously easy to potty train, and they do exist, then you get a puppy that is not naturally easy to potty train, and it feels like you're failing and like something is wrong with the puppy, but it's just that you got a normal puppy instead of the unicorn puppy that made it really easy. But consistency plays a really big role. Most of the time when people are struggling, it's because they're not being as consistent as they need to be, and then it takes them way longer to potty train than if they just do the hard work. If you just do the hard work for 2 weeks and you stick with it, a lot of the times you can get the results really fast. So let's break it down by age. There's like that quick formula where you take the puppy's age in months and you add the number 1, and that's like the maximum amount of hours you should expect them to hold it. So for example, let's say we had a 3-month-old puppy, we add 1, that's 4 hours max. That's always going to vary a little.
That's gracious too.
So yes,
that is being very gracious. It's not a minimum of 4+. It is, if you're very lucky and the puppy's sleeping very hard and very well, then they can probably hold it for 4 hours without an accident.
Right. So that's our general rule of thumb. And it's going to vary because, bigger puppies have bigger bladders than little teeny tiny Chihuahua puppies have very teeny. I literally met a Chihuahua puppy the other day and he could fit in my hand. Like he was teeny tiny. Yeah. So the smaller the puppy, the smaller the bladder. But I also think that when we think of potty training from just a physical body standpoint, we're not considering the mental. What is a puppy actually capable of thinking? For me, under 5 months, I'm treating them like an infant. We are going out very regularly, more than we need to go. I do not expect the puppy to tell me they need to go potty at all. That's my job to determine, okay, we haven't gone in a while, we need to go outside. I think a lot of what the trend is now is those potty bells that I see everywhere. Everybody buys potty bells as soon as they get a puppy. And at 4 months old, they're like, well, I'm trying to teach the puppy to use the potty bells to tell me they need to go outside. And I have to be like, let's step way back and let's potty train the puppy first.
Yes.
Then we'll teach them how to tell you. The rule that I give my clients is I do not expect a puppy to be capable of communicating to you that they need to go out to go potty until they're at least 9 months. And a lot of people gasp. They go, it's really old. It is possible younger, but I don't put that responsibility on the dog until 9 months old.
Even then, it's not even a responsibility or an expectation. It's a idea we can plant in the dog's brain at that age and say, hey, this is an option when you interact with these bells. This is the result that happens. And we're hoping to fast track that process of the dog understanding how they can get what they want faster by telling us, by using the bells. But even then, when dogs are that young, you can teach the behavior of getting to the bells, but it's still a matter of when the dog actually makes that connection, that it is attached to their bladder versus the behavior of just going outside. And that's the biggest area that I think people fall off on with the bell training is it's pretty simple and it's pretty easy to teach dogs bell. But what happens when you teach them the bell? They go to the door and they hit it all the time. And then now
I want to go out and play.
yeah, now they think it's just attached to going outside, which it is. But what happened before that, what changed in our behavior was when they told us when we're beginning the bell training, puppy hits the bell, we go outside, we make sure puppy goes outside and potties. Well, once the dog is reliably hitting the bell, we just let them outside and stop enforcing that and making sure and following through that they actually go potty. So that whole behavior is disconnected once they've learned how to hit the bell. Then we just change it to, okay, now you go outside and you do your thing. So we detach ourselves really quickly with the bell training when we're potty training. That I think that's one of my biggest hiccups with using our rat with the bells.
I don't like the bells. I try to tell people to not use the bells. I've even told people to throw them in the trash. Because in reality, when you potty train your puppy the right way, so they are fully potty trained, you and your puppy will figure it out. None of my dogs know potty bells. I can tell when they need to go outside.
Yeah.
My shepherd will come to the middle of whatever room I'm in, awkwardly in the middle. He will sit very, very proper. It's almost like a nervous, like his ears go back. And he'll sit there very quietly, but looking right at me. And I'm like, do you need to go potty? And he jumps up all excited. And then my old guy, before the dementia kicked in, he would always just go stand by the door. And if you couldn't see the door, he'd kind of wander to where you could see him. You'd look at him and he'd walk to the door. I never taught him that. They figured it out. So when you actually potty train a dog, most of the time you will learn how to read them so well, and they will learn how to communicate to you that you don't need the bells.
My boxer wiggles. It depends on his mood. When he's particularly sassy, which is often, is he will just get up and come around to the couch wherever I'm at, or wherever I'm at really. And then he'll just start wiggling and growling at me, like just leaning back and forth and just growling and blowing snot. And it's less being silly. And he got my attention. I let him out and he goes and he's fine. And then he goes and lays down and he doesn't do it again. So sometimes he does that just to be silly, but that's his obnoxious way of letting me know he's got to go outside.
Yeah. So they'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Now that we've got some of those expectations out of the way, let's talk about different tools we use to potty train. Let's talk about potty pads or puppy pads or training pads, whatever you want to call them. Do you recommend people use them?
Never. A dog is wanting to go potty where it feels good. They don't know what's right and wrong. They just know what feels good and doesn't feel good. Holding it in doesn't feel good. When they extend themselves, it feels good. So when you put the potty pads inside, you're reinforcing good feeling of going potty inside. Yes, you can get away from it from little puppies, litters of puppies, or just a smaller puppy, like a smaller breed dog. You can get away from them if they've been used. It does take a lot more diligence, but ultimately I stay away from them. Any form of reinforcing that behavior inside the walls, you want to stay away from.
I agree. And I think there's another point there that a lot of people don't think about. You're right. They get rewarded because it feels good by going potty inside. We've talked about clarity before. Some dogs need more information than others to get the picture. A lot of dogs, they don't isolate, oh, I only go potty outside. It's, oh, I could go inside or outside, wherever. But then I get back to where we tend to think of dogs as robots. We don't think of them as living, breathing creatures with anatomy. This happens in humans. If you go pee when you don't need to go pee and you go too much, your pelvic floor will get weaker and your bladder muscles get weaker and you're going to have to go to the bathroom more and you can't hold it as well as other people. The same thing happens with dogs. So I have these 2 small breed puppies that I'm doing private lessons with right now. And they got a litter box for them when they first got the puppies. And I told them, like, hey, is the goal for them to go potty in the house forever? And they were like, no, of course not. I'm like, okay, we got to get rid of the litter box. And every week I'd go back and the litter box would still be there and they'd still be having trouble potty training. And then we were having a conversation a week or 2 ago and they told me, they're like, well, I feel like we can't get rid of the litter box because they're still not potty trained. I'm like, you can't potty train them because you haven't gotten rid of the litter box. I think what was happening with the male puppy was he was so used to going potty whenever he felt like it, whenever he felt like he needed to, that I don't think his bladder muscles were strong enough to actually hold it through the night, because every morning, first thing, he'd have to pee. He couldn't make it outside. I don't think his body is able to hold it because he's never had to. So those muscles aren't strengthening. When your puppy has the opportunity to go more often than they should need to, their muscles are going to be too weak to hold it for longer.
Yeah, and that's a tricky line because when we're coaching people on potty training and doing these things, we encourage them, get them out as much as possible so that they go outside and they don't go inside. Well, then there's that other side of it that we do have to encourage them to hold it a little bit longer sometimes without peeing inside, because they do have to hold those bladder muscles. And that is the only way that their body is going to understand how to hold it without it feeling that tingling that they got to go and then immediately just releasing it. That is a fine line. And that is part of the process of potty training. And I think that's where people maybe get down on themselves about the process of potty training, because it is lengthy, it is tedious, and it is pretty demanding. And I think people fall off and get down on themselves about that, because when you have that, if I wait too long, then they still go. If I don't wait long enough, then they still go, and then that back and forth. But it's just a part of the process, and we do have to just be thorough and see it through. That therefore the dogs are always being reinforced by going outside, by the act of doing it, as well as us reinforcing it while encouraging holder durations throughout the day to build those bladder muscles.
It is a very fine line. I'd say probably for the average puppy, 5.5 to 6 months is where I start seeing if we can, okay, we're going to hold it a little longer. Under 5.5 months, we're going out very frequently, way more than we need to.
Yep. Agreed.
Then we get into the crate training aspect of potty training. Most people don't have the luxury of staying home and being with their puppy 24/7. You have to go to sleep at night. You have to go to work, or you have to go to the grocery store, pick the kids up from school and take them to soccer or something like that. Using a crate is going to help significantly with potty training, right?
Absolutely. Typically, dogs don't like to mess where they're lying. So that encourages them to hold it a little bit longer that way.
Dogs naturally don't want to go to the bathroom where they eat and where they sleep. So when we can crate train them and they eat in their crate and they sleep in their crate, it's a very natural way for us to deter them from just going to the bathroom whenever they immediately feel the need to. I usually will recommend a nice, snug, comfortable but snug crate. So just big enough that the puppy can stand up, turn around and lay down, but not walk around. Because I've seen puppies, if the space is too big, they'll just go potty in one corner, and then they might even take the blankets and bury it with the blankets. And they go, it's fine, I can sleep over here. So a nice, snug, small space where they eat and where they sleep can help. Crate training is a whole episode in itself, so we won't go too in detail there. When you're working with your clients, playpens versus crates, what are the pros of each? What are the cons of each? How do you coach them on how to use the different crate versus playpen?
Crate, I would define and I would specify a little bit more, as that's rest time, that's downtime. You can put toys and bones and stuff in a crate, but I guess if you're going to use an X10 or a playpen like that, that would be where I would make it very clear that that's an area where their space is just smaller. They still have access to a toy or a bone or treats or something along those lines. But the crate I'd use more as, this is where we go to sleep. This is where we go to lay down. This is where we relax. And that's where I would start increasing or making the difference in their head to encourage. This is where I would work on my separation anxiety stuff too in the crate. So I would make the difference between the two: no liberty versus semi-liberty, or a little bit of liberty. And the crate is going to be, there's no liberty. There's no like choice making that they can do in there. There's no options of toys or bones. That would be rest, relaxation, sleep. This is where you can work on decreasing some separation anxiety while the puppy has one option, which is to rest and relax, while you create separation or visual disruption between you and the puppy. If our puppies tend to not like to be out of our sight, this is where you can encourage them to relax. And then when they're ready to come out, after nap time, whatever, you can use something like an X10 or a playpen to give them a little bit more freedom, that they can move around, they can make choices, they can play with toys, and they have other options while you are still managing them. Like if they're chewing on something they shouldn't, biting or trying to escape or barking or whining, or you can do some training, you can do some playing. The puppies have just a little bit more options, but they're still limited in which choices they're allowed to make, because you are in control of what space that they're in, versus the other option is just no X pen and then a puppy free in the room. And then now you've opened up the door for all of the opportunities and options for that puppy. They can go chew on cords. They can climb on furniture. They can chew on chair legs. So when you can confine their space a little bit more by using an X10, you're allowing them and cultivating better decision making and better choice making when we get to the point of more freedom in the house or in that room, that they have better choice making skills at that point.
I don't think puppies need a playpen. A crate, a nice small space, is going to deter potty training accidents and help us significantly with potty training. A playpen, if the space is too big too soon, can hurt your potty training because now the puppy's got all this room to go potty. The only area to me a playpen would really help with potty training is, let's say I have a puppy or a slightly older dog that has a habit of going potty in your guest bedroom. A playpen stops them from getting to that space to help stop that habit, but it's not going to help the overall skill of potty training.
Yeah, if you give puppy too much freedom too fast, they're going to use that as an accessible option for potty training. It's more of a management technique too. Therefore, if puppies do go run off and hide, you can use that as a management technique to eliminate the opportunity that puppies can go run off and hide and potty that behind the chair or wherever they're not supposed to go. But ultimately, it still comes down to management, and we need to have our eyes on the puppy all the time. And you can accomplish that by making sure that puppy's on leash 100% of the time when they're out of the crate. Therefore, you don't have to use like a blocking off like with the next 10 or something.
So now we've managed the puppies. We're using a crate or a playpen to manage. Now, let's say you bring a brand new puppy home, little 8-week-old puppy. When do you take the puppy out?
The answer is always, and is the first thing you do.
I always make it like a list, and I'll print it out and I'll put it on people's fridge, like with a magnet. As soon as the puppy wakes up, whether that's overnight or from a nap, as soon as the puppy stops playing, because if you watch puppies right before they go potty, they'll be play, 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 and all of a sudden they stop playing and they start to sniff the floor, immediately outside to go potty. As soon as they wake up, as soon as they're done playing, for young puppies like that, as soon as they're done eating or as soon as they're done drinking, as they get a couple weeks older, I might do 5 minutes after eating, 5 minutes after drinking. But if you don't know that your puppy can hold it that long yet, immediately after eating and drinking. And honestly, if your puppy is having accidents in the house, you're probably not taking them out enough. More is always better. Don't wait until you think your puppy needs to go. Take them out before they need to go to make sure they can empty.
Or don't wait till they've already gone in the house to throw them outside to finish going. Get out, because that's not going to happen. You're already a step too late. When I was potty training my border whippet, Maeve, she collectively in under a year, I think she pottied in the house maybe 3 times. And in the house and the crate.
I think Grim had 2 when I got him. Granted, I got him at 12 weeks, so he was a couple weeks older than most puppies that first come home, but 2 accidents, and then both of them were my fault.
Yep. My Doberman Silas, he was the worst dog to crate train. That dog, he had messy crate syndrome, which if you don't know what that is, it's kind of a behavior that we've coined as just to encompass all of the characteristics of a dog that does not mind messing in their crate, playing in it, eating it, drinking it, likes laying in it, likes playing in it, like all of that. He was that dog. And it took me up until he was about 4 months old to stop messing in his crate. It was terrible. It was hands down the worst experience and that was the hardest it ever took to potty train a dog. We are going to circle back to what do we do if dogs have accidents in their crates. But for right now, we'll assume we're taking our puppy out super often. Another big mistake that I see people make that makes potty training go longer and longer is they're not getting up in the middle of the night to take the puppy out. We tend to bring home these cute little puppies and we want them to just be adult dogs already. So you do all this potty training during the day and then you're like, oh, I just want to lay down and go to sleep. And you set your alarm for 8 to 10 hours from now. And then of course, puppy has an accident. So for those puppies that just come home 8 to 12 weeks, you're getting up in the middle of the night at some point, if not 2 or 3 times to take them out to go potty. It's just like having a newborn. You got to get up a couple times. And it's not the advice people want to hear, but I can't go in and change anatomy and just put a hold on their bladder. They're babies. They have to go. Admittedly, I'll push the limits overnight sometimes. It is harder getting up at night. We're human. It's hard to sleeping is fun. But it's still an important area to reflect on too. If we did wait too long, it's not that that puppy is doing it on purpose. It's not like they know. We can't claim, oh, they know better. They don't. They know what feels good to them at that time. And expressing their bladder is what felt good because we weren't waking up. So
it goes back to every puppy's different. There are some puppies that can hold it longer overnight and some that struggle more. It's like humans. When I'm up and awake during the day and I'm drinking a bunch of water and eating my lunch and driving around town, I have to go pee more often than when I just go to sleep at night. Most dogs can hold it better at night. And people get a little frustrated. They'll go, well, they hold it for 8 hours at night, but they can't go 4 hours during the day. And it's like, well, yeah, they're up and moving and awake and drinking water and eating food.
the stimulation of their day is what gets to them before the thought of them needing to go. And before they remember that they need to go or feel that they really need to go, oftentimes when they're that young, it's because they just have to go right that second. And that's when their body registered they need to go. And when they have weaker bladder muscles, of course, that's going to be a quicker decision that they make because it feels good sooner.
Mm-hmm. And at that kind of 3 months into 4 months age, puppies do not have any time between when their body registers their bladder or their bowels are full and when they start going. There is no thinking process there. A 3-month-old puppy isn't going, oh, I kind of have to pee, walks around a bit, gets bored, then decides to go on your floor. They just have to go. What does somebody do if they get a new puppy, but they work long hours and they're trying to potty train?
There's a lot of different options you can do. I've had people hire rover people throughout the middle of the day. You just let puppy out midday, put them back in the crate or the playpen. You can ask if you've got alternate schedules with people in the house. Of course, you can ask for help tag teaming that one. You can always ask for help from friends or family or something if they wanted to help on certain days that you work. But there's a lot that goes into, and it also just depends on what's accessible. I don't recommend a daycare setting for some of that to alleviate a lot of their boredom while you're at work or help with the potty training aspect, because oftentimes those dogs or those puppies are just getting thrown into the big play groups and they just go because puppies, that's what they do when they get too excited. They'll just go in the middle of playing. And so they're really not being reinforced in the right way or the right areas or the right time for that behavior. So I would typically stay away from something like a daycare.
Even for adult dogs, I worked in a daycare 10 years ago, very briefly. I was not there for very long. The setting was not for me. But legally speaking, at least in the state that I was in, there was a certain amount of employees that needed to be present per a certain amount of dogs.
Yes.
And the daycare, the way it was set up, it was a good daycare. It was a very standard daycare. There was an outdoor space, but the state that I live in, outdoor is not a year-round thing that we do because it gets very cold and wet and snowy and the dogs can't be out there all day. So it was like a big indoor room with waterproof flooring that was easy to clean. And once dogs got dropped off, they were not being brought outside for potty breaks. The dogs would just go on the floor and we were very quick to clean it up. But from a potty training standpoint, that is the opposite of what you want to be doing for a puppy or for an adult dog that is having accidents in the house.
Because for an adult dog, something like that picture can translate or transfer over to, okay, I'm in a new environment, a place that I'm not familiar with a bunch of other dogs. Say they're familiar with it at a certain point, whatever. They go to a new place, someplace that's not home, that has new dogs and new people. Great, now you want to go to your in-laws' house in a different state, new people and new dogs. What's the difference in the dog's brain? Why can I do it there at the daycare, but I can't do it here? So for some dogs who don't have that true understanding of house training or potty training, sometimes that can make sense why your dog lifted its leg on the plant at the in-law's house, because the behavior could have been reinforced from a daycare setting, like you just said.
And it's kind of one of those things where I have totally gotten dogs impulsively before myself, but when you're getting a puppy, you should always be thinking ahead before you even get that puppy. You should have a plan in place for, well, if I have to work an 8-hour day and I can't come home 4 times to let them out at 2 hours minimum, somebody else needs to be able to be there to let the puppy out. So maybe hiring a dog walker or having a family member come. So you have a family member who works from home, ask them if they can come bring their computer to your house and hang out with the puppy during the day.
Yeah.
Or even I've had some clients that have the luxury, not everybody can do this, but they actually take the puppy to work with them. And at least, you're then there to take them out. So you have to have a plan in place, but there is no magic wand that a dog trainer has that goes, oh, you work 8 hours? No big deal. Let me go in and reprogram them to not have to go. That's just not something we can do.
And it's also not our responsibility. That's your puppy, your dog. You're asking us for help, and we're giving you the best way you can get that, but we can't change and we can't speed that process up.
Okay, so far we've got a puppy. We have a crate for them. They sleep, they eat in their crate. We are supervising them at all times when they're loose in the house. We're taking them out super, super frequently after they wake up, after they're done playing, after they eat, after they drink. What do we do, or what is the thought process if a puppy is doing really well with potty training and then all of a sudden they start to regress and they start having accidents in the house again? As a dog trainer, let's say I called you with that. My puppy's been doing great. We haven't had accidents in a couple weeks, and now all of a sudden we're having accidents again. Well, what is the problem solving that you do?
I would ask if they're first off using a leash on the puppy when they're out of the crate and free to move about the house. And then I would ask and see if there's anything new that's changed in their day-to-day routine with their work or with how they interact with their dog, or anyone in the house interacts with that dog. If there's any major life change in routine, change in structure, someone like say left on a deployment, change in environment or big changes in environment like that can definitely set a puppy to regress a little because their routine is totally out of whack. I would try to figure out where the catalyst happened to give them a little bit of clarity as to an understanding why. And it's probably not their fault, but oftentimes it is that we've given a puppy too much freedom too fast that they aren't quite ready for. And then they'll regress by doing behaviors like that. So I would recommend going back to a little bit more structured time on the leash in the house where an adult's eyes are on the puppy at all times, as well as maybe a little bit more intentional downtime in the crate, like another 30 minutes to an hour of downtime instead of like free time or playtime. Of course, making sure that the puppy's needs have been met before that. And then I would go back to ensuring and coaching them that they know what their routine is, what their role and responsibility is when we are doing this crate training process, and that they don't have any other questions from there. But that would be the first thing I do.
Too much freedom too soon is something that we see happen in almost all aspects of dog behavior problems, not just potty training.
Playpens too.
Yeah, very true. Sometimes, let's say it was one of my clients that called me with that. First, I'm going to do the same thing you do. I'm going to say, well, what's changed? What routine? Is there stress? Like anything stressful happening? But I'll also a lot of the time say, hey, why don't we get a quick urine test or fecal test from the vet just to be sure? Because UTIs, super common. Parasites in puppies, crazy common. And some of them, like I know Giardia in particular, goes through a life cycle within the dog's body. So the dog will have symptoms kind of on a cycle that comes and goes. So even if the fecal was negative, sometimes I'll have them recheck in a couple weeks. If the problems are still happening and we were doing really well with potty training and we're doing everything else right, it never hurts to get a good vet check.
Right.
We didn't quite go over, we skipped a step here though. What do people do when they're outside with their puppy? Okay, we're trying to potty train the puppy, we're getting them outside, but now they're outside with the puppy. My advice is to always have the puppy on a leash.
Yeah.
That way we're preventing them from running around and digging and getting the zoomies and trying to play. It's like, hey, we're out here to work. So I'll usually take the puppy out on a leash. I ignore the puppy completely. I'm not talking to them. I don't start petting them and playing with them. And I will just wait until the puppy goes potty. And then the key is you wait until they are done. You don't interrupt them mid-squat. Wait until they're done. And then I'll mark it with a yes. And sometimes I'll pay them depending on how easy or difficult the puppy is potty trained. If we have a fenced in yard, like a safe area, that's when I take the leash off and we'll play for a couple minutes. What I've seen happen in the past is puppies will think that going in is a punishment. So they don't want to go potty. They're like, I want to spend time outside.
Right.
But as soon as I go potty, the humans drag me in. So I'm very careful about, oh, good, you went potty. Now you get some freedom to sniff around or we play or we hang out, even if it's just a couple minutes.
Yeah, I'd say I'm really good at making sure I've got treats on me when I'm potty training a puppy. As I'm going flying out that door, I'm finding something like a treat or a piece of kibble or something. I'm going outside with food. And I do try to reinforce that behavior outside as much as possible. Reinforcement history is very powerful. And if they know every time they relieve themselves and they get a treat, it's more encouragement for them to hurry up and get outside and get their treat. I'll always make sure that I'll celebrate and I'll throw a party with them too, but I'll usually try to grab 2 or 3 pieces of food at minimum or treats or something and after they've done potty, like you said, wait till they're completely finished, mark and reward. And then I'll make them like chase food if food's a motivation for them, or I'll like sneak a toy in my jacket or something. That way there is a bigger reinforcement aside from just relieving their bladder. There's also going to be a celebration on my end too. And I want them to look forward to that too. And it encourages more of that behavior outside.
Now, how about let's talk a little bit about excited peeing or submissive peeing, depending on why it's happening and what we want to call it. That is basically, in a nutshell, when a dog gets a big feeling. Usually it's like a lot of excitement or a lot of nervousness, and then their bladder just empties, which, at least I'm curious to hear your take on this, because I don't consider that a potty training issue, because it's involuntary to the puppy or the adult dog, whatever age the dog is doing it. It's not a choice they make. It's a reaction their body has.
Yeah, I have a good example. This actually just happened to my 2-year-old Malinois this last weekend at the hotel we were at. My boyfriend walked in the room. I had her loose in the room and she was just hanging out on the bed, and he walked in and he got on the bed with her and was like rolling around and loving on her, and she was just getting excited, and they were roughhousing a little bit. And she loves to play. She'll get really wound up that way. And so I typically avoid, especially if she's standing on my bed. I don't like her thinking it's a WWE ring. And so I don't have that problem because I don't encourage that behavior. She's a very, very, very well potty trained dog. She can hold it for over 12 hours if needed. She's very good. So the fact that she did get so excited to the point that it's just a couple little piddles. She didn't just blow her bladder out. Like, it wasn't this crazy thing, but she did pee, and it was because she was overexcited and overstimulated. And that's something that she doesn't typically get to see. So I don't worry that it was a potty training issue. It was an overstimulation issue, and her body couldn't help it.
Mm-hmm. I don't think of it as a potty training issue because it's an involuntary response from the body. It's not a choice the dog is making or a pattern they're trying to make. But sometimes it can become enough of a problem where we can group it into the potty training category. I used to have, Sam, you remember Gunner. So before Grim, he was a rescue, and it took me, I'm not even kidding you, a year to potty train this dog. He was the most difficult dog to potty train I've ever had to deal with. And I will give him credit. For 6 months that I had him, there was a medical issue that the vet did not catch that I didn't know about. And once we solved that, I got significantly better. But he was a really big submissive peer. So it stemmed from nervousness, not excitement. And it was every single time I came home, I would keep him in the crate. He destroyed 7 crates. Crate training was really difficult too, but he'd be in the crate. And as soon as I walked in the door, he would look at me and just, his bladder would empty. And it wasn't a choice he made. He really couldn't help it. He was just so nervous. When I got home, his crate was right by my front door. Like, it was right there and ready. And I had a slip lead ready on the hook by the front door. And when I would come home, I would walk in my front door backwards, not look at him, very calmly, like with the calmest energy you could muster. Open the crate door, slip the slip lead on, and very quickly walk him out the front door so he could pee in the yard. And then it just came down to, like, that is not what solved the issue. What solved the issue was confidence building and him getting more used to me and more comfortable. But that's just how I managed it until it got better.
Incredible.
We see dogs do that. He was more of an extreme case, but we see puppies do it. Like, I've had when I go to somebody's house and their puppy sees me and it gets so excited and it piddles on the floor. Or you walk into the vet and the vet looks at your puppy and they get nervous and they pee. Not that they can excited pee for the vet too. I shouldn't have made it sound like the vet is the big monster that they're always nervous of.
Right.
But that is something where we may need to work on the emotion of why it's happening. Why are they so nervous? Or do we need to teach them how to deal with their excitement? But we fix that problem by dealing with those emotions, not by just trying to fix it as a potty training issue.
Yeah, I'd say those are more isolated, a little bit more isolated, because you can control. Sometimes we can't always control how a dog feels, but we can control up until that point of feeling that same thing. And that feeling is what causes, like, the nervousness or the timidness causes submissive peeing, or the opposite for excited peeing. Sometimes we can try to cap it and avoid that conflict of the nervous peeing. And like you said, that's where you avoided the triggers. Oftentimes it could have been eye contact accidentally. Eye contact is very threatening to nervous dogs. So in his case, he expressed his nervousness by expressing himself. And excited peeing cannot be eliminated by making sure the dog's on a leash, and that we avoid exciting scenarios while we're managing a dog. We can manage it through play, like obedience, and operationally like that, or we can use other management tools like the dog in a crate, or teaching a dog emotional regulation, teaching them to not get to that level in their head. Therefore, they just don't get to level 10 in their head. That's when they pee themselves. It's not allowing the dog to reach that state of mind.
And not always. There's definitely your here and there case of an adult dog like the one that I had, or like Tip on the bed, having that incident of I got too excited or I got too nervous. Most of the time, though, it's mostly young puppies, and they will grow out of it when their bladder gets stronger. It is super, super common for 3 and 4-month-old puppies. And then they hit 5 months, their bladder is stronger and it doesn't happen anymore. So like when I've got a young puppy that does that when I walk in the first time, because they're so excited to see the treat lady, the next time I come over, I tell the client, hey, meet me outside. Like just put them on a leash, walk out front. That way they can go into the grass and I'll say hi to them. And if they have pee, we don't have to clean it up. Most of the time after a couple weeks, it's not even a thought in my head because the bladder muscles have strengthened and it doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
Okay, here's the gross one, the one that everybody hates. Puppies that eat poop. I'm going to group that into potty training. It's gross. It might not be exactly potty training, but we're going to put it in this category. It is gross.
Yeah. Oftentimes you can assume or you can wonder if it's a medical thing, meaning the dog is lacking nutrients that poop has in, and therefore their body is craving it, telling them it's food and it's nutrients and they need to eat it. Oftentimes it really is just a silly, fun behavior that dogs learn they can do, and then they just keep doing it. If it's a medical thing, then that's where we need to figure out the diet and ensuring that the dog is on an appropriate diet, that they are getting all the nutrients they need. If it's a behavior thing and it's a habit, the silly habit that the dog has built, then they need to be managed. They need to be watched. You can either manage it by making sure poop is picked up every single time, or you can correct the behavior really early on and deter them from making that choice again. Therefore, they never learn how much more fun it is or how much more yummy it is, or whatever the reason is for the dog making that choice.
Mm-hmm. It's a very natural dog behavior. It's gross and repulsive to us, but dogs and other animals will do it because when they eat their food the first time, some of the nutrients don't get absorbed. So if they eat it, they can get more nutrients from it. Usually my first thing is, regardless of whether even if we think it's just behavioral, I'll say, hey, let's put the dog on a prebiotic, probiotic digestive enzyme, especially if they're having tummy issues. Then usually if they're having tummy issues and eating poop, I'm like, hey, why don't you get over to the vet and work on that? But usually that's my first, is let's make sure that they're on a good quality food and they're getting all of the supplements needed to help them absorb it. Then we're going to treat it behaviorally. That gets tricky when you have a young puppy that's not fully potty trained yet, because it's one thing to have an adult dog where they go outside, they poop, and you can immediately clean it up. But when you have a puppy that is just pooping on your floor when you turn your back and then immediately eating it, it's harder to predict and manage. Really being strict in that. We're using crate training as a management tool. The puppy's always on a leash with me in the house. We're taking them out plenty so that as soon as they go, I can pick it up. That's really big, just to break the habit. If a dog is, let's say it's an older puppy or an adult dog, that is where too, if you really want to solve the problem, you've got to be outside with them to clean up after them immediately. That's kind of one of the ones where I'll see people go, hey, MJ, I hate that my dog does this. How do I fix it? And I tell them how to fix it. And they go, it's not worth it to me to do that. I'm like, oh, that's fine. That's your choice.
Yeah.
But that's how you fix it.
Yeah. And oftentimes when I say correct the behavior, it doesn't have to be this big scary thing, but we do need to be able to be powerful enough in the sense that we're motivating the puppy enough to leave that thing alone because we have to have something more valuable, or we need to redirect their attention and their thought process into doing something else. It doesn't always have to mean a leash pop or like an actual firm correction. It is just to redirect them into a correct other behavior. Therefore, that gives us an opportunity to remove the poop, or you can play go into a little training scenario when the puppy looks at the food or looks at the poop and looks away, gets rewarded, or just we recall past it. Just little bits of baby things to practice impulse control and a little bit more structure and control around that. Then you can remove it. I always like to look at it from that way as well. When this resource is present, how much control on my dog's behavior do I have? So when you can implement different forms of control, like a sit stay or recall away, or just a flat off command or leave it, that's how much more control you have on that resource that we don't understand why the puppies have value in it, but they do. But the more you can control that, and you can control their choice making around said resource, it also puts you a little bit of an advantage that the puppy's not going to dive bomb for it the moment they see it, because we're going to snatch it really quick and get it out of the way, because then they got to beat you to the punch to get the poop. So there's different ways that you can go around managing it, but ultimately it does come down to we have to be out there and we have to be impressionable in the moment to and be persuasive enough that your puppy doesn't want to eat it again.
Let's talk about, or I guess we'll just open this up for additional notes on potty training. So as professional dog trainers, that's all kind of the basics of it. I know I have a couple little things that I like to add in for potty training. I think what we covered tackles the initial part of like, we've got a young puppy and we're trying to build good habits outside, but it's easiest to build habits when we start really young. One of the common enough issues that I get called for is an adult dog that is very well potty trained in the comfort of their backyard, but will not go potty on a leash or will not go potty out in public or anywhere that's not their home, which doesn't seem like the end of the world when you're in the honeymoon phase of having a puppy. But if you want to take that dog on vacation with you and you're staying in a hotel, the dog's going to have to go potty on a leash out familiar with. Or if you're trying to work on socialization and manners out in the world, if you're going to, like when I go to a store with my dog, you go potty outside first. He doesn't mark inside. It's not a habit, but I'm going to have you empty yourself first just in case. When you're potty training your puppy, generalizing that, maybe if we have the luxury of a fenced in yard, sure, we make sure we practice going off leash, but sometimes I'm going to put you on a leash in the front yard, or maybe I encourage you to go potty on a walk and we start to put it on a verbal cue. Putting it on verbal cue is not my top priority with potty training, but it is a priority at a certain point so that the dog learns, oh, okay, they said go potty. Let me go off into the bushes over there and relieve myself before they have to leave for work. Weirdly, it's my intact male, the one that should be the marker that pees on everything. He's not. He's still intact, guys. He does not mark. I did teach him that. He just doesn't do it. He is the one where I used to have an issue where he would just not have to go. And I'm like, buddy, I'm about to leave for 10 hours to go to work. You have to empty yourself. And he's like, nah, I don't have to. So putting it on cue where you can say, hey, I'm about to leave. Here's your chance is also very helpful.
Yeah. Well, teaching a puppy from the very beginning, when we do it, it's one of the first things I incidentally teach is the word go potty on command. And it's the easiest thing to do. It's the most valuable thing to do as well in that early stage, because when you do have a puppy who is learning how to hold their bladder, we have to be so consistent with their environment at first for them to get the picture. And then we obviously have to get them to understand now that means go potty in a new place, in a new environment, at a new house, at a new yard, on a trail, at the hotel, wherever. Sometimes they're on a leash, sometimes they're not. That's also something that they need to learn how to do. Having that on cue is super helpful, but also provide clarity to the dog what they're supposed to be doing. Say they are nervous in a new environment and they don't know what to do, and you're just standing there on a leash. And if you can, they're looking at you for direction and what are we doing? Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. And you can just say, hey, go potty. They go, oh gosh, okay, cool. I can do that here. That alone can help build their confidence as well. And when I have clients that tell me that their dogs don't potty outside their own yard, or even when they take them on walks 1 to 2 times a day, they never express themselves on walks. I'll say the very first thing if they want to fix this problem and they're asking for help, I'll let them know. Make sure that first thing in the morning when they have to go, put them on a leash, take them on a walk, take them 2 houses down, take them by a street light or something that is new. And they got to go so bad that they just have to trust that where they're going is right and that they can go there. And then they get reinforced for it. And then guess what? You can go back home and then move on with your day. But the time that you know the dog really, really, really has to go, take them somewhere new. Load them up in the car, go 5 minutes around the block, just around the park around the block. Something like that to throw off the environment. But you know that the body is in that position that they really got to go. Wait them out. They should eventually go.
It's such a little thing that people don't think of, particularly because most dogs just generalize that naturally on their own. Even if it's not on cue, you take them over to the bushes and they'll eventually go potty. But some dogs really don't want to do that. So it's better to prepare yourself early so that then you can go on vacation and you can take them hiking and not worry about it when you do need them to go.
Yep. Making pottying in like exciting environments or just like stimulating environments is another one. Our backyards are typically really quiet. or our front yards, if like you're in an apartment or something, it's typically pretty quiet. But somewhere where there's a little bit more hustle and bustle, oftentimes that's really tough for puppies to know or to learn how to focus on pottying there, and they have a harder time. So there's always other things to look for when we're pottying, is what other types of environments do we want them to learn to focus in too. That's the application I want them to understand when we're doing potty training as well, the generalization of it.
Okay, Sam. So that about sums up potty training for the most part, right?
I agree. Yes.
Okay. Since we are terrible at talking way too much and probably giving people more information than they want, which is good, we're going to end this here. And we're just going to do socialization as a part 2 then, just that people don't have to sit through 2 hours worth of a podcast episode. We'll end this one here with potty training. And then next time, so in 2 Mondays, you're going to see another episode pop up and we will talk about socializing your puppies. In the meantime, Sam has taken herself off of Instagram, so you can no longer find her there. You can find her at her website. What was that again?
Canineinsighttraining.com.
And you can find me, CaneIneAcademy.com, or on TikTok or Instagram at MJ_the dog trainer. We will talk to you all next time.